Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Samyager here, along with Ben Schneider and Joshua Birch from Joshua Birch Motorsports. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, calling the show Mark and Robin, for investing in the Grid Network and keeping us on the air throughout the entire 2022 Formula One season. And, of course, to continue to support us through Patreon or Buy Me Coffee. That is what Edward, Amber, and Zach have done. And, of course, definitely encourage everyone in the chat room, share your questions, opinions with us as we recap the end of the 2022 F1 season. And it ended this race without any major incidents, really. We had the yellow flag briefly for Schumacher and Nicholas Latifi going for a spin. But Max Verstappen ran away with the race, no contest. The second place battle, though, Charles Leclerc finished ahead of Sergio Perez, a 3-point difference, which is very interesting because that means, depending on what happened in Brazil, would have really not made that much of a difference had Verstappen swapped positions or not. But overall, Perez, he didn't have that great first stint on the other tire, the medium tire. Had to pit him much earlier, put on the 2-tire strategy. Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, a couple other drivers made the one-stop strategy work. Overall, starting with you, Ben, was Leclerc the better driver all season ahead of Perez?
I'm tempted to say so just because he's Ferrari's number one and Checo is Red Bull's number two. But it was very, very close all throughout the year, and I do think Red Bull had a little bit of a better car. Ferrari might have been able to make things interesting if they had reliability sorted out the first half and into the middle of the season. But I think Red Bull would have pulled away either way by the end there. But it was very close, and all credit to Checo and Sergio Perez had a great season, picking up 2 wins, although it's not as much compared to Max's 15 and the phenomenal season that he had. But I think it was very, very close. But at the end of the day, I think Perez had the advantage in terms of his car, and so that maybe makes me think Leclerc got more out of the Ferrari than Checo got out of the Red Bull. But very, very close. Difficult to say. And I guess the standings will tell you by 3 points it was Leclerc. But very even battle all throughout this season. And that's why I came right down with checkered flag here today.
Absolutely. Very close indeed throughout the season. But I'm going to let stats. I'm a commentator, so I'll let stats do it. I've put my glasses on. Leclerc won in Bahrain, 1 in Australia, and 1 in Austria. 3 races. Perez won in Monaco and Singapore. 2 races. However, Perez's 2 race wins were absolutely fantastic. And when I say fantastic, I mean both in wet, tricky street weather conditions, tamed it brilliantly. Ferrari's strategy was absolutely nowhere throughout half the season. So I think realistically, Leclerc, if it was the first half of the season, Leclerc, yes, he deserved to have second place in the standings. Second half of the season, no, it's Perez. So in my books, I'm a bit disappointed that Perez never got second and it has gone to Leclerc. But I do know that Leclerc has a big bonus in his contract if he actually finishes second. So he gets an extra couple of million for Christmas from Ferrari. But I don't know. I think the way the season's gone, I would agree with Ben. It's the correct way round. It's happened with Verstappen and Leclerc, and then it's Perez, then it's Russell, then it's Hamilton, Sainz down in 6th. I think that's the way it should always be. But it gave us something to cheer on throughout the race as well. So it wasn't the battle for first. It wasn't quite as dramatic as last year's Abu Dhabi, where on this very show 12 months ago, we went on for like 2.5 hours, closer to 3, waiting to see what was happening. I was on my phone, my microphone lead bust. Still haven't replaced that as well. So it's just been that type of season. This season's felt like such a quick rush. You can't get your head together with it. So they both deserve second, but I think it's the correct way around. And also, just quickly, before I throw it back to you, Joe, I just want to say Mercedes have tied Nick de Vries to a tyre trolley and and a huge group of the team wheeled him down to AlphaTauri and dropped him in the garage after earlier the same team threw him in the marina. And he starts work tomorrow at his new team on the tyre test. So Nick de Vries has been tarred and feathered. Very good. Carry on.
Especially no longer part with Mercedes. Of course, all the changes are going to start taking place because it's going to be Tuesday. First testing again. Very short break. Leclerc and Perez just as well too. Very short break. Leclerc, we know he's motivated to get Ferrari up towards the front because I feel Ferrari, we know the strategy issues, the mistakes they've had. I'm still very curious if they didn't have those mistakes, how many more wins he could have gotten, more points, and maybe this could have been very much a more straightforward contest. But overall, the entire season, Perez was at the right place at the right time to capitalize and make it a tie. Just not today. It didn't work out. But of course, those two plus Verstappen, they were during some great burnouts on the front stretch at the end of the race. This has become sort of a tradition too, where we see multiple drivers making burnouts throughout the tracks. One driver many fans were essentially saying farewell, and thank you to Sebastian Vettel. He had a great qualifying effort. Got into Q3 on the one-stop strategy, and it just didn't work for him. He was on the radio asking, how did we get it so wrong? He scored points mainly because Lewis Hamilton did not finish, retired due to some hydraulic mechanical issues. Had that not occurred, he would not have been in the top 10. The only other driver to retire was Fernando Alonso, who will be replacing Vettel in that Aston Martin team. Joshua, do you believe Fernando Alonso is making the right move considering Vettel and the team struggle really in 2021 and 2022?
I'll admit I was shocked when after Hungary we heard that this was the deal, because our understanding was that we knew Sebastian was retiring and it was going to be Mick Schumacher taking over his seat. Apparently Fernando walked in and said, I want to drive here. The team obviously went, okay, because they're going to take a world champion. Of course they are. They've lost one, they're going to take another. So Alonso and Aston, I think Alonso likes building teams. Now, I think he's built up Alpine as best as they can be. They finished 4th in the Constructors' Championship this year after getting ahead of McLaren, who finished in 5th. I think going to Aston Martin, who have ended the season technically 7th, but technically joint 6th because they're an Alfa Romeo level on points on 55. So I think he likes developing teams in his old age. He just enjoys racing. He enjoys getting a team to work. And I think Aston Martin can still be good. They've had a very bad couple of seasons since they joined the team, but they're getting it together. And I think we could see them battling for the same positions as Alpine next season. So I think it's an okay move for now if it works out in testing, because he likes developing the team. So he'll whip them into shape, no problem. But it's risky at the moment, but I've got confidence he knows what he's doing. But then again, I'm sure Ben's going to say something about how every team he's been to and left, they start winning.
Well, Josh, I want to keep you on the screen here, actually, because I know we were having this discussion several months ago.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the right move for Fernando Alonso will, I hope you guys can still hear me. I'm seeing my internet going down. The right move for Fernando Alonso will always and forever, until further notice, be coming to America to run a full IndyCar season schedule so that he can truly commit to the Indianapolis 500 and therefore a Triple Crown. Until that happens, Fernando Alonso bumping from midfield team to midfield team, I just don't understand what he has to gain at this point in his career. And Josh, I'll throw this question to you. Which is better for Fernando Alonso's legacy? Winning the Triple Crown, or at least continuing to fight for the Triple Crown, or being remembered as a fantastic world champion who always was in the wrong place at the wrong time in Formula One, but at least he got to help Alpine and Aston Martin towards the end of his career. I mean, I just feel like
easy.
Fernando Alonso has so much more to gain coming here to IndyCar to commit to the Indy 500 than he does going to fight for 11th with Aston Martin, just as he was fighting for 11th with Alpine this season. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I completely agree with you, Ben. It's something that Fernando needs to. Fernando, blimey, I'm tired. Fernando definitely needs to do. He needs to go over to America, commit to a full season and a couple of seasons as well of IndyCar, and get a grip on that car to properly challenge for the 500. And I think he could do it as well. So I don't know why. I thought that was going. I thought he'll see out the contract at Alpine and head off to the States and do the 500. I'm surprised he's taken up another 2-year contract. And he's holding back Drugovich now. Drugovich would have been perfect, and he's holding them back. And Megan's going to come down and hit me in a minute. I think she's working there. But Alonso doesn't really fit in Formula One anymore. I think he fits better in WEC. He fits better he's done WEC to death now. So I think he fits better at Indy trying for the 500, because we know Castanero has proved it. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you are fast, if you've got the determination, you've got the knowledge, you will win the 500.
Yes, you can win the 500 in your mid-40s, like you just said. You know, it's unprecedented. When Michael Schumacher came back in his early 40s, you know, he was not any more in his prime than, you know, what compared to where he was in Ferrari. I know Mercedes, you know, was kind of a similar situation, actually. He was helping build them up, and I don't think Michael gets nearly enough credit for the job that Mercedes have done.
On my screen right now, I'm just seeing they've actually cable tied De Vries to the trolley and are wheeling him down. I wish I could show you right now, but the whole team, they just wheeled him in as well. He's got a beer in his hand as well. So go on, Ben.
Nice. No worries. No, just what I was saying about Alonso. I think you brought up a great point with Drugovich as well. And I wanted to reiterate, you know, the 2021 F2 champion was Oscar Piastri. He wasn't on the grid this year. He was affiliated with Alpine. Who was in the Alpine this year? Fernando Alonso. Who's going to be in the Aston Martin next year while Felipe Drugovich is a reserve driver? It's going to be Fernando Alonso. So in a way, Fernando Alonso, you could almost argue, is single-handedly responsible for the fact that the last 2 Formula 2 champions were not on the Formula 1 grid, and he's out here at 40 years old, or whatever it is, in his early 40s now, puttering around fighting for points at best most weekends, when he could be fighting for a triple crown in IndyCar. It's just, I like what we've seen the entire back half of his career. It's a career move and a career decision that he's made that just makes very little sense to me.
I'll go one better. 2017 as well. Button and Alonso holding back Van Dorn.
That's right.
2015 holding back Magnussen. He does it. Alonso holds back the drivers. He held back Magnussen in 2015 when he was alongside Button. He held back Van Dorn for a couple of years. Then he held back... I'm trying to think. Now he's held back Piastri. Now he's holding back Drugovich. Alonso just gets in the way. But on his day, he's a great driver, but he hasn't had his day for a long, long time now. Next year, it will be... Let me just double check this. Yeah, next year, it will be 10 years since his last win, which was the Spanish Grand Prix 2013. So next May, it'll be 10 years since his last win in Formula One. And he's got the longest winless streak in Formula One. He does, yeah. I mean, what's the point? What is the point?
The point could be breaking Kimi's record, I guess, for most races between wins here. But he might sneak in a podium like he did last year with Alpine. I mean, that to me is his ceiling. Unless Aston Martin take a massive step forward in the offseason, I just don't see it happening.
I think he'll whip them into shape, though, into something as well, because he likes it his way, of course. So there'll be something. 2023 is going to be a lot more entertaining than 2022. I can already confirm that, because so much is going to happen in terms of stories, in terms of development of technology and everything, the car's understanding, the Red Bull being hit by the crossback. It's going to be so dramatic. And I don't think we're not going to have room to breathe next year for the stories and the storylines that we're going to be telling. I'm looking forward to it already, but I think we all agree we need a break. So I'll throw it back to you, Joe.
Yeah, big break. I think we could all use. A couple comments in the chat room from Michael Tiller. Aston Martin did not do too bad of a job for the final race of the season, so you have to give them credit. Overall, Lance Stroll, much better race, got the points, and then Vettel getting the point, especially once we saw Lewis Hamilton retire. Then, if memory serves me correctly, Kimi was the last Ferrari driver to win a title for them. That is correct. Kimi Raikkonen, he was here for a long time. Not just crazy to say that Fernando Alonso next year will be 10 years since his last win. Any driver in any discipline, we're talking about, it's been 10 years since they last won in this series. I feel it's just something very rare because that normally don't happen. Just the thought that Aston Martin really wants to bring Fernando Alonso on board. They think he could get them in shape. We'll see what happens, but by 2025, 3 years from now, that'll be 20 years since his first championship. I think it'll be crazy if he's still in F1 and we hit that milestone.
The only way it makes sense for him to still be in F1 is if Christian Horner gives him a call. That's the only team that I could see. Like, because I mean, Ferrari would be the similar situation, right? They don't quite have the best car on the grid, so maybe he overachieves and comes up just short of a championship. Mercedes are trying to work their way back up there, and every other team, is going to be nowhere close to the big three, if you will. So what's the point? Come to IndyCar, come win the Indianapolis 500, and go get that Triple Crown, like Zach Brown was telling you when you retired the first time. What was that? 4 years ago already? Crazy how time.
Yeah, long time. And of course, as you mentioned, McLaren, one driver leaving McLaren, Daniel Ricciardo, in the post-race show on F1 TV, Pato O'Ward was there and was asking Daniel, he was there talking about how great of a character Daniel Ricciardo was. When Daniel Ricciardo showed up, we then saw James Hinchcliffe. How about coming to IndyCar? Daniel Ricciardo, of course, didn't give the exact answer, but he's going to be on his way out. McLaren, they finished behind Alpine because of the struggles Daniel Ricciardo had. Lando Norris really carried that team. Ocon, he finished one position behind Lando Norris. We know next year Lando Norris is getting a new teammate with Oscar Piastri, and of course Pierre Gasly is going to join Alpine. He might still have all those penalty points he needs to be careful about. Overall, when it comes to the offseason, testing is only Tuesday. Which team do you feel looks stronger entering the test, in Alpine or McLaren?
I don't know. Again, it's like with Charles and Checo at the start of the show. It's very, very close, but I'm tempted to lean towards McLaren only because I feel like we've seen a slightly higher ceiling on their best day in recent years. Of course, they got the 1-2 last year at Monza. Although now that I think about it, Alpine won a race as well with Esteban Ocon in 2021. So, like I said, they're very close to very even. But I just think, like you said, Joe, if McLaren had a second driver, and again, no disrespect to Daniel Ricciardo, he's an 8-time race winner. He's a race winner with McLaren. But just for whatever reason, that partnership did not work out. And it was clear that they needed to hit the reset button for 2023. If Piastri and Norris can work well together as a team, I think they have a slightly higher upside than Ocon and why is the name not coming to me now? Who's going to be Gasly? That's right. Thank you. Yeah. I'm telling you, I need an off season. I need a break. I knew the name, it just wasn't. That's right. Gasly, of course. I think you're going to see a little bit more from McLaren in 2023 at this moment, but that could change very quickly.
I agree with you, Ben, as well, because McLaren have got a lot to offer next year. I mean, they've nicked Piastri from Alpine. That's not going to make them happy. It didn't. It was a long court case. They've got Lando Norris, who is coming on year, but he's going to be entering, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. His fifth season already in Formula One, and he's winless. That is scary to think. So there's a lot to do, and I think if McLaren aren't winners next year for at least 2 or 3 races, it's a failure. They've got to get back up there, and Ted's now been given a Stetson. This is just, it's the end of year for Sky. Crofty had one earlier, now Ted's got one. Can I have a Stetson, actually? I'd like a Stetson. Oh, he's put it on his antenna. Never mind. The things we get up to on this show. But yeah, I think McLaren are going to be quick, but I'd actually go Alpine. I think Alpine have been looking very good in terms of how they've been developing. I think they were slowed down by Alonso and Ocon's battling with each other. I think Gasly's coming in is going to give them a very much needed kick. So I think Alpine are going to be looking at 2 drivers who fierce races together. They've got a good strategy with a good strategy department, good team principle. Alpine could retain 4th next year and maybe even fight for 3rd if somebody messes up big time in the off season. So yeah, I think Alpine will come out ahead of McLaren. as Ted's giving the Stetson back.
Going to be interesting to see. Comment in the chat from Adam Lemmery. McLaren will win in 2023. One of the big things I know, I've heard that drivers, like I recall Charles Leclerc, if Ferrari was to give him an uncompetitive car, he would have a clause to leave the team. Next year, if McLaren was to have a car that was not competitive, finish again behind the Alpine, we know Lando Norris has that long contract with McLaren. He's already been there for quite some time. Do you think he starts thinking, maybe I should start looking elsewhere? Or do you think maybe there might be a clause saying, hey, we're not fifth place, we're better in the constructors? You got the option to start looking? Because we know some teams were looking at him earlier this year.
Josh, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. As I'm getting information feeding in my ears all the time as well, so it's quite hard to hear. But yeah, I think Charles Leclerc has looked miserable this year at Ferrari. I think we saw in Brazil how much he was just like, oh, thanks, guys. Thank you, all that lot. We will talk later, all this lot as well. And I think they've had a competitive car all season. They've had a car, and this is what's going to hurt them most. They've had a car this year that could have won the World Championship. And they've been thwarted by their own strategy department. That has been the key. Yes, they've had, 2 reliability issues this season, maybe 3 max? Yeah, 3. So 2 for Leclerc, 1 for Sainz. That's not that bad of a deal. Red Bull had the same thing. They've had a World Championship winning car, and they've thrown it away by bad strategy. So I think Binotto is going. I think Lawrence Marquez is the head strategist. He's going. And I think a whole new team will be in place by next season, a team that actually knows how to do it. And I think that might give Charles a little bit more stability to stay for 2023, even if it is a bad car, because he knows that the right people are in the right places for 2024. But I still think with the changes and minor tweaks to the 2022 car, we could see Leclerc contend for the championship next year. Although I just said on my show that Russell will be the champion next year. So I've thrown myself out on the limb there. But they took all the good ones. This is a different show, so I'm going Leclerc.
I don't know. I mean, how much longer does Lewis Hamilton have? Would there be a seat open at Mercedes in the near future? Because I don't see George Russell leaving.
Well, I've had the little nod, the little tap of the nose. The rumor is, I must say rumor, even though I know it, is the fact that Lewis Hamilton is going to sign another 2-year contract with an option of a third. That'll take him through 2023, 2024, and then an option for 2025, but he will not be there in 2026. That is for sure, because Mercedes have already lined up another very fast young driver who is in the Euro formulas this year, who's going to Freca next year on a 3-year plan. Freca, Formula 3, Formula 2, then to Formula 1. But there is somebody coming out that Mercedes is lining up as their next champion, and Lewis is beginning to wind down his F1 career shortly. But they want to keep Russell. They need Russell for stability for a while.
It's going to be really interesting, as Adam says. So weird that Lewis Hamilton did not get the win this year. Now, one of the big things, of course, next year, some new faces. The final piece of the silly season puzzle was revealed. Logan Sargeant, he is going to be in Formula 1 next year. He secured the points he needed in the Formula 2 season ending race and the standings. But he's going to be there, but it's going to be really interesting with the Williams team, because we know the last time we had an American on the grid, Alexander Rossi, that was with the Manor team. That was a team that we knew they were going to be in the back of the pack. Williams, they have been in the back of the pack for quite some time. They do have new management, though. They got these new rules where they're going to get more wind tunnel times. They're going to get their salary cap is not going to be too big unless we see some changes ahead with that, because we know the enforcement of that is something else. Joshua, starting with you. We know Formula 1 has been growing very big here in the United States. There's a lot of sports Americans follow here. If Williams continues to be a backmarker team like they have this year, would he really add value to F1's appeal towards Americans if they just know he's going to be close back to the pack?
If anybody likes an underdog, it's you Americans. You always root for the underdog. And I think that is something that has got a unique selling point with Williams. They're a British team with American owners. and an American driver and a Thai driver who is British Thai. So there's a lot of cultures there that work so perfectly together. And I think Williams have been threatening the top 10 quite a lot this year. They've got 8 points, but that was due to Albon and De Vries, and then only literally was in Japan. Latifi got some points as well. But just look at today's result. Albon was 13th and was fighting hard throughout the entire Grand Prix. Nicholas Latifi finished 19th, 3 laps down, but he still couldn't manage to get ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who had stopped 3 laps before. That's how disastrous Latifi was in Formula One. He just wasn't suited to the car. So I think Williams next year are going to have a mighty good performance with Sargeant coming in. He's a fast, aggressive driver, loving the look of him. And Alexander Albon, we know what he can do. He's very, very quick and very, very competitive. So I think Williams will be regular point scorers. I think they'll sort of be like AlphaTauri, 8th and 9th in the races, and it'll become more of a regular thing, scoring points throughout the season. So they'll jump up. I think actually Haas will start slowly going back down to the bottom as well of 9th and 10th. Although Haas had a great year, 8th, 37 points to them. So well done. 2 points clear of AlphaTauri today. Haas, after being pointless last year and right at the bottom, to get 37 this year was fantastic. And they've sacked Mick to put Hulkenberg in. It doesn't make sense. Ted's now wearing a Save the Bees t-shirt. I've just looked up. He's wearing a Sebastian Vettel Save the Bees t-shirt. Why is it every time I look up on this monitor, Ted has some different form of clothing on? I'm going to miss the notebook over the winter. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, well, Michael's saying I have to wonder if we're going to lose Mick Schumacher since he won't be racing with Haas. Personally, I don't want him to leave F1, not like this anyway. I completely agree. You know, I'll get into Sargeant here in a second, but just to bounce off of what Josh was saying with Haas, it's a move that I'm not really understanding myself. I guess Hulkenberg brings the experience, but you know, it's not like this is Hulkenberg's comeback to finally score his podium. I guess I didn't see Haas taking a pole this year, so maybe there might be a crazy race next season where he can sneak one in there. But I don't see him doing that significantly better in that car than Mick did this year. And Mick obviously still has several years left where he can continue to get better and gain experience. And I don't think this is the end. I think you've got the Audi team coming in in a few years, and I think there might be a seat lined up for him a little bit down the line, maybe as early as 2024. But he's not going to get any experience sitting out next year, so I think it's a very unfortunate deal for him. Let me just say this might have been why I forgot Pierre Gasly's name earlier as well, because I've been up since 4 a.m. I got up to watch the Formula 2 race and see Logan Sargeant finally seal the deal, get rid of that whole cloud hanging over his head. Will he get the super license? Will he not? I think we all knew he probably was going to. It was going to take a perfect storm of events for him not to. He did drop one place down in the standings, which is what I was saying on the show. I think one or two drivers might overtake him, but for him to fall low enough, especially with the FP1 outings and the clean penalty points records, he basically had it locked up, and now it's officially official. Congratulations to him. And, to answer the question, Joe, I think, you and I were talking about this a little bit before we went on the air. Manor was always going to be a backmarker team. That's just, when they came into the sport in 2010, all the way through the end of their run in 2016, that was always kind of their ceiling was, maybe they can scrap a point here or there every other season or something. But, the budget that they had, the car development was never going to be competitive. Williams is different. Williams have been a backmarker for the last several years now. They're on this run of finishing 9th or 10th in the constructors, but it wasn't that long ago that they were breaking up the big three. They finished ahead of Ferrari in 2014. They finished ahead of Red Bull in 2015. They picked up a handful of podiums with Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa. So that team has a recent history of doing quite well. And obviously, if you go back in time to their championship history, that there's a lot of history of Williams. It's not a one-year process to get back there. I'm not saying Sargent's going to go out and compete for a championship or even, wins or podiums next season. But you look at what all three of their drivers that did at least one race for them did this year, picking up at least 1 or 2 points here or there. I think Sargeant can certainly contend for points on weekends where everything goes his way. And I think he could surprise a lot of people and run quite well. I think he's got a better opportunity for points and for solid runs than Alexander Rossi had in 2015, and he's there for the full season, or at least that's the plan for now. So I think that's working in his benefit as well. Of course, Josh, I know you and I are probably going to talk a lot more about this. Probably going to be the main topic of the show tomorrow on Encore. So we'll save some of it for that. But I think I think Logan Sargeant's in a good position, and as a rookie in F1, I mean, how many years did Nicholas Latifi get before they finally ran out of patience with him? I don't think Williams are going to look at a potentially pointless season for him next year and decide to immediately sack him or anything. I think he's got at least a couple of years where he can at least take his first year to learn and continue to gain experience, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I think Williams have a higher ceiling now, despite their recent struggles, than Manor ever had when Alexander Rossi was there.
Yeah, one of the big things when it comes to Williams, they have the potential to get there. It's going to be really interesting to see how next year go. And of course, the testing session will be a good indicator. Another comment. I mean, I know Schumacher had some crashes this season, but I still see potential in him. I want to see him continue. I think I know we talked a little bit about this yesterday, how Schumacher, a fan favorite, doesn't necessarily have the funds compared to his teammate last year in Haas. Nikita Mazepin with those funds. Latifi, another driver with the funds, be around much longer. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this new Williams team goes with the rookie. And of course, next year, along with having the American on the grid, the United States, there'll be 3 Grand Prix weekends, but potentially 4 races. Several media outlets, including Autosports, report on the potential sprint races locations in 2023. And one of those locations, Circuits of the Americas, they have seen over 400,000 attendance over the F1 weekend at Dakota, Circuits of the America. The other tracks potentially hosting it, Baku, that'll be a new one for them. The Red Bull Ring, which has had them. Spa, Belgium, one of the more popular tracks in the entire F1 calendar. Losail, Qatar, of course, they were a host last year with all the changes. They're hosting the World Cup this year. And Interlagos, Japan, Brazil, which has been hosting the sprint races just about annually as well. I know this is not exactly the most popular topic, sprint races. It's very polarizing for motorsports fans. But if this track lineup is eventually confirmed, are these the best venues to host a sprint race?
Do you want the cynical answer or do you want my real answer? Because the cynical answer is there are no tracks that are best suited for a sprint race because we shouldn't.
Hang on, Interlagos has proved it is. Even I've said that. Come on, that sprint was probably the best one we saw.
Yes, it was. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, in principle, there should be no sprint races. What was wrong with what? How does it make sense to do things one way and determine the starting grid one way 3 times a year, but a different way the other 20 times a year? Kevin Magnussen should have been starting on the front row.
That I agree with.
Yes. At least he got credit for the pole. We can take solace in that. But yes, let's be honest, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. It's the whole NASCAR playoffs, NASCAR stage racing debate all over again for me. But yes, of course, Interlagos should be one of them. I don't know, but that's the only time I must confess it was an entertaining sprint. So I guess it achieved its purpose. It was more entertaining. There's that word again. Than watching an FP3. But I don't know. That's the only time I've looked at the sprint and said, okay, I guess they've kind of worked as intended here. We'll have to see. I suppose it might work at Spa. It'd be interesting for the American fans to see how they react to having one next year. But in terms of where it works well, I think Brazil is the only track where it's been proven to work as intended. Again, I hesitate to say well, just because I'm opposed to the idea of sprint racing in principle, but I won't harp on that too much. I'll let Josh go ahead and answer the question here.
It's very good. I've just been hearing Ted in one ear and you in the other, and you both sound so similar. I was talking to Ted here soon, but I agree with you as well. I think looking at it, if we have to have this sprint, which I agree with you, it does annoy me. Although I must admit, I found Brazil quite easy as a weekend to follow. Usually with sprints, especially from a broadcasting point of view, I'm like, all right, what's next? Why are we doing? It's qualifying next, right? This. It's a massive rush to get all the graphics sorted out and all the notes set up earlier than ever, and it is a massive pressure. But in Brazil, it was like, okay, it's qualifying now. It's going to rain. This is brilliant. And then it was on Saturday. Oh, God, this sprint is amazing. This is fantastic. And then there was the race on Saturday. I was like, this is amazing stuff. And then I agree. It's better than watching a practice 3 session, but practice 2 is slotted in between qualifying and sprint, and that still doesn't work. That's still the boring one. So we need to find a couple of things to change with them. In terms of tracks, Emilia-Romagna doesn't work. Imola doesn't work as a sprint circuit. It's too tight. That needs a long Grand Prix for it to play out quickly enough. Austria does work at a push because it's a short track. But Interlagos absolutely works as a sprint venue. Just to say, it was a good sprint as well. Looking at it, Baku, if they're suggesting that, then that's idiotic, because the reason Baku's race works so well is because it's very dramatic at the start, then it looms out during the race, and then it brings it all together again at the end quite quickly. So that's Baku's very hit and miss, and the sprint wouldn't work there. It'll spoil it. Red Bull Ring, I've already said works. Spa, no, don't touch Spa. Don't touch that Spa. Nobody wants. We're glad we've got it on the calendar, but don't ruin it. Spa is the ultimate challenge of a racing driver. Every time you go up a Rouge, it's life or death. We've seen that more recently, and it's the ultimate edge, and you don't want to do that twice. So no. Kota, as Adam says, Kota for a sprint race, I like it. Yeah, I think Kota could work as a third sprint race event. That's definitely up there. That works in short settings. We've seen that. Losail in Qatar, well, that's being modified to host F1 now, that Losail International Circuit, because that's why it's not hosting MotoGP season. No, they're both going later on in the year. So that it's I didn't really like the race in Qatar, so I don't know why we're going back there, because it's on the wrong track. It's designed for motorcycles. It's literally like racing. It's tighter than Monaco at that track for racing lines. It's ridiculous. It's like building a Scalextric track and putting a big F1 car model on it and expecting it to go around. It doesn't. And Interlagos, has already said, proves it better. So I would it's 6 next year, isn't it? So keep the 3. So I'll go sprint races I want to see. Saudi Arabia as a sprint. Then we'll go to Barcelona. Could be fun, but no, I'm scrapping that. Red Bull Ring. Silverstone was good. Then I'll go Monza. That was a good one. No, it wasn't. It was terrible. But Monza. Then we'll go Kota. Then we'll go Brazil. There you go. There's the 6.
When it comes to the sprint races, and I'm glad Ben brought up about his opinion on the playoffs, because it sort of gives me the vibes where we've seen NASCAR put tracks in certain places in the schedule to create that excitement, like the Roval, the Charlotte Roval is a cutoff race. Martinsville is a cutoff race. Talladega in the playoffs. Baku, we know that race has a reputation for being crazy. I feel like we're putting it in there because now we can say we've seen not just a crazy Grand Prix, but potentially a crazy sprint race where the drivers know they got to rush towards the front to improve their starting position. And we know that track has that reputation of crazy races. If we get where, okay, here's the set grid for the sprint race, we do the sprint race, will that really spoil Baku? It potentially, I think, could, because you don't have some of the things that happen in qualifying. I mean, just look at what happened in Interlagos. If Magnussen did not have that sprint race, he would have been in the front row, nowhere near Daniel Ricciardo to go out on that first lap, ruining any shot at points. Red Bull Ring, we've seen it. I would say it works there. Same with Interlagos. Spa Belgium, I have to agree with you, Joshua. I feel like that should just be the Grand Prix weekend. We know that track traditionally is not the easiest to get to for the fans. To now add a sprint race there, I just wonder when it comes to the infrastructure, now having a sprint race on a Saturday, more fans in attendance, that's going to be something else. The only one I really feel like, okay, this makes sense, is the United States. Such huge attendance the last couple of years. The American fan base have really grown to F1. That venue, along with Formula One, they have some big concerts, big events. Might as well throw in there a sprint race. But overall, I just feel like the sprint races, it just feels so unnecessary. And of course, let's not even talk about MotoGP sprint races. That's going to be something else for next year. But overall, it's going to be really interesting to see once this news comes out. Of course, we'll be following it right here on the Grid Network as the news breaks out. And of course, pretty much our 2022 coverage is starting to get near the end. Overall, we had a good season of Formula One races. 15 of them were won by Max Verstappen. We saw Red Bull take the World Constructors' Championship, almost get a 1-2, but they didn't. Ferrari, they have to be pleased. A driver second in the championship. And as a lot of folks have mentioned, first time in a long time, Vettel or Lewis Hamilton not second in the world standard. Really something else. This was the first year of the brand new car. We saw some good racing this year, I feel. The goal is to get better on-track racing. The points, well, Verstappen just dominated it, especially once we saw them getting away from Ferrari. The salary cap, of course, that's going to be in effect again next year. It'll be really interesting to see what happens, especially after what happened with Red Bull and their catering mess this year. Wind tunnel allocation, wind tunnel reduction time for Red Bull, more for Williams. Joshua, did the new car deliver this year, and will we see even closer competition next year? Or potentially, and we've seen this in other series, the big 3 or 2 get further ahead from the rest?
I think the car has delivered in some respects. It's given us a lot the chance to overtake, like DRS was supposed to. But we're still in these long processional races where we can get 2-3 seconds ahead. And I think something still needs to be done about that. But we have had better wheel-to-wheel action this year. But I was concerned today in the race when we saw Schumacher and Latifi. The fact that literally Schumacher just touched the back of Latifi. Little contact. No damage at all to either until Latifi hit the wall. But no damage to the front wing end plate. And yet they both instantly went round. It was like a pendulum. They shouldn't do that. That's not supposed to happen. So I'm very worried as to why that happened. And it is down to the aerodynamics because they both did it. So I'm worried about that. I think we have had closer real racing. I think tracks where longer straights showed it. Silverstone, that amazing battle. Japan showed it with how good it could be. Bahrain, the season opener, kicked off brilliantly. Saudi Arabia disappointed me a little bit this year compared to last, but then again, it wasn't a crash fest. I think it's delivered, but there's work to be done. And I think next year we will see closer racing because Red Bull have got less aero time, as you said. Williams have got more. The top 3 aren't going to break away from this. If anything, we're going to see them get a bit closer. Ferrari, they've already got a good car. They just need to get the strategy department updated. And Mercedes, I think, have got a handle on their new version of their own car with the sightless pods. They'll learn what they've done this year wrong, get it right next year, come back stronger. Red Bull, though, I've got less money to work with, less time to work with in terms of Eurotunnel. They're going to be racing effectively in the pre-season with one arm tied behind their back. So we're going to be in for a very interesting first start to the season until we get back to the first European race, which is, I think, Barcelona, or is Barcelona after Monaco now? Anyway, the first proper track we have where we see the updates. That's when we're going to see. We won't see the updates at a street circuit. We'll see them at a proper circuit. So Imola, first 4 races.
Well, even with the cost cap, the big 3 still took every race in the 22 race season. Obviously, Max had 15 and Checo had 2, so that's 17 for Red Bull. And then just trying to pull the standings back up here, make sure I don't misspeak. I guess Leclerc had 3, Sainz had 1, so that gets you to 21, and then Russell won Brazil, right? So that's all of them. So It's not like we saw a shock Alpine win or McLaren win or AlphaTauri win like we've seen Racing Point, who are now Aston Martin. They've all won races in 2020 or 2021, and this year it didn't happen. So if anything, you could maybe argue the big 3 pulled even further ahead and solidified their hold on competing for these wins and championships. But I don't know. I think the midfield battle is as close as it's ever been. And I think in terms of watching wheel-to-wheel action, Josh, like you were saying, I think that's as good as it's ever been, certainly better than some of the seasons in the past that we've seen recently. So, I think obviously it's a brand new set of regulations. It's going to take some time. This was the first season, I think, aside from the fact that Verstappen just ran away with it. You'd like to see a close fight for the championship. Maybe Ferrari could have given us that if they had a better strategy department. So we'll see if that ever improves. I feel like we've been talking about that for the last decade and a half now, though. So we'll see on that front. But I think, it was still a solid year. When you look past the dominance of Verstappen, we still had some great battles all throughout the field. And, it's the first time in a while that Mercedes weren't true championship contenders. So it did mix things up a little bit. But I think there is still some room for improvement, as there always is after just one season.
Room for improvement. Overall, good season, I feel, as well. Definitely something to look forward to in 2023. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm sorry and glad we are going to have a nice long break before Formula One comes back on the track, especially with next year with the expansion of Las Vegas. That's going to be something else. Overall, we've talked a lot about this final race. Now for our one shining moment. Besides this race weekend, in the F1 season, what was your one shining moment? Starting with you, Ben.
Oh wow, the entire season. I got to think about that for a second. I guess I'll start with today. My one shining moment is Logan Sargeant and finally getting that seat confirmed. Although maybe I should have saved that for tomorrow's show since that's F2. But I guess it's technically F1 as well, right? Because he's going for an F1 seat with Williams next season. That was always a goal, and now it's officially confirmed. So well done to him, and a great rookie season, rookie of the year in F2, and now he gets the promotion. Though I am still frustrated Drugovich doesn't have a seat as well as the dominating champion of Formula 2 this year. But that's a discussion we can have tomorrow. In terms of the entire season, I guess who else? Max Verstappen winning 15 races and smashing the previous record. I mean, it's just, what more can you say? A dominant year. I know there were a lot of people questioning his championship last year. There's absolutely no way you can question his championship this year. And you shouldn't question it last year either, because it wasn't his fault that Michael Masi made the decisions that he made. But now it's confirmed. There's absolutely no argument you can make this year that anybody else was robbed of the title. There was no doubt Max Verstappen is the fully deserving, appropriate world champion. And nobody can take that away from him or argue against that. It was just a truly phenomenal year. And you've got to give him credit, whether you love him or hate him. Red Bull fired on all cylinders this year, with Verstappen in particular, and it was a great season.
Yeah, it's quite hard to define moment of the season and moment of the weekend. Moment of the weekend, I think, would be the track run that the entire Formula One paddock did yesterday for Sebastian Vettel. He invited them to run the track with him, and Vettel went to each and every person there across the lap and had a conversation with them for a few seconds. I say a few seconds, there's about 100 of them. But it was very good and very nice to say goodbye to a 4-time world champion there. Moment of the season, that's very difficult. There's been a lot of good ones. I did say earlier on in the review show on the YouTube channel, I said Bahrain, I think, was one of my favorite races of the year because it kickstarted a whole new era. There was so much drama, with so many storylines that started. But I think my favorite has to go to Silverstone. That amazing atmosphere race we had where Joe flipped upside down and we were waiting around and he found out he was perfectly okay. Hamilton being side by side, going up the inside at the last corner at Club, passing Perez and Leclerc, then Alonso getting in the mix as well, Sainz winning his first race as well. It was just the perfect weekend. F1 always goes well at Silverstone. So I think that's my moment of the year and the weekend for Seb as well.
I would say for the weekend, my shining moment, I think, would have to go to essentially Charles Leclerc getting second place. After everything he went through, it had been an emotional roller coaster this season of looking like you're the favorite for the championship, falling slightly behind Red Bull, then falling further behind, and then to the point where it was just almost becoming, we've seen the clown memes all over a Ferrari strategy where it just felt like, are they really just constant it for me? He got second place, not the championship, but hopefully he'll be around some good folks next year to get a chance at contending for the championship throughout the rest of the season, not just the first few races. Overall for the season, I would have to say one of the shining moments I think has to be, in my opinion, probably one of the better races was the British Grand Prix in Silverstone. The start, that had a lot of people on the edge. Thankfully, We saw Ronnie Joe was okay. We saw the media attention that crash brought. Thankfully, it was okay. We weren't talking about a serious situation, but it really shows the safety features of these cars to go over the tire wall between the guardrail and a safety fence. Amazing, and we know the improvements next year for the roll hoop to prevent what Joe experienced, and just another testament of the halo. Then the race itself, that was a very entertaining race. The battles, especially when we saw Leclerc, Perez, and Hamilton get around both of them, and you hear the crowd cheering. Those are the moments in sports every sports fan loves. The passion, the excitement of motorsports. And then Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari team told Sainz, hey, we need you to help him. Sainz, no, don't do this to me. Go out there, gets his first win from the pole. He's been around quite a long time in F1. Big, huge moment for him, and I think a big confidence boost for him and that team that, look, if we put everything together, we could beat the Red Bull team. We just got to take the right steps in 2023 to make that happen. Couple comments in the chat room from Michael Tillier. No, you shouldn't blame Max at all. I still see a lot of arguments from the haters, but as much as I can understand it, it's the past and it's time to move forward. I think we all agree with that. Now he's a two-time champion. This one, he flat out dominated. You're right, Josh. It's very hard to say bye to Vettel, four-time champion, the only one on the grid to name every F1 champion all the way back from 1950. That was an impressive, real degree.
I get stuck at 82. I get stuck at 82, around about 83, 84. I get stuck back then.
I think I could go back to 92, but then it gets harder and harder. And for Michael, one shining moment has to be United States Grand Prix with what the turnout throughout the entire weekend. Very impressive turnout. And I think some of us probably remembers how it was very risky to talk building this huge complex Circuits of America for F1. But now it just looks like it is paying dividends, and hopefully that continues for the organization that runs Circuits of America. And speak about dividends, we encourage everyone to invest in the Grid Network, like calling the show Mark and Robin does. Each and every month, they contribute to the Grid Network, and you could do a one-time contribution as well through Buy Me a Coffee or just buy a drink for your favorite on-air personality right here on the Grid Network. And if you're looking to invest in the stock market, public.com. Use the referral code GRIDnet for free stocks from public.com. And once again, you just download the app, type in GRIDnet, use the tools to start learning how to invest in the stock market. And of course, we're going to be on the air throughout 2022, 2023, coming up around the corner. So be sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or even on LinkedIn. So definitely be following us all around social media. And of course, we got a holiday coming up this weekend, so we're going to have Grid Encore Monday. Joshua and Ben will be there. Then Wednesday's Grid Tonight will not be on the air in observation of Thanksgiving the next day. Same with the Women in Motorsports. Then we'll be looking at coming back on the air for Grid Life pre-race when it's for the Adelaide 500 returning back, Australian supercars. That'll be a normal real life pre-race and wrap up. And then, of course, just we highly encourage, be sure to subscribe to us right here on the Grid Network. And especially as we got more programming, we encourage everyone to check out our roundtable. All three of us participated in. We're going to have more roundtables for the remainder of 2022. For Joshua Birch and Ben Snyder, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's show. We'll see you next time, and have a wonderful day.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.